Time itself is a mechanism for constricting divine grace. But beyond the boundaries of time, all is grace. Clearly realized grace. And so there's this juxtaposition. If you could think about like an island, or a iceberg, that most of it is below the surface and just a bit is peeking up top. That's grace. There's so much terrain of grace that we do not realize, that we don't recognize. And the object of spiritual realization, the goal is to survey and encompass more and more and more of the grace that's abound. To bring it from the latent, the unrealized, below the surface, increasingly into realization. This relates to events that happen in the world. There are horrors that happen in the world. But it starts within yourself. Within yourself. Many people, they focus a lot of energy on Jung called the shadow. The mystics call the Sitra Achra, the other side. The Sitra Achra are the forces of obscurity. They cover the light of grace. They mirror it, they mask it with a cloak of darkness, or randomness, seeming happenstance, chaos. Things just happen. Bad things just happen. Forces, this whole legions of angelic forces, their job is to mask divine grace. So that way you can have authentic expression. You can perceive yourself to a degree as distant from God's grace. So that way when you realize grace, that's expression of love and devotion. And that love and devotion is not just parsimony, I benefit, so I give benefit, but it's true love and devotion. Chesed she'emes, true grace. If you go into the depths of your own psyche, your own self, your own awareness, you'll find that there's always a tug of war between the aspects of yourself that you admire and the aspects of yourself that you're repressing, and you lend a lot of energy to repress and press down. And you'll find that as a person, you're more tolerant of people that are more like your realized qualities. And the people that remind you of your latent, unrealized qualities, you're less tolerant of them because they're reminding you of exactly what you're trying to repress. So as a byproduct of your repression, your prosecution of those qualities, your tolerance for the other becomes diminished because they are sitting and breaking your system of stasis, and everything is shifting in their presence, and you're being reminded of everything you don't want to acknowledge within yourself, and it's stirring the pot, and you can't see grace in it. But understand that the great mystics explain that your love has to be unconditional. without condition. You have to love everyone. You have to love the divine in everyone. In all its forms. That's where God is. You know, there's a verse from the prophets that's recited in the liturgy, and they changed the word. Because blessed is God. Yotzer Or, who forms light, Boreh Choshech, and creates darkness. Oseh Shalom, makes peace or wholeness. And the verse goes, Uvore es hara, and creates evil. And in the liturgy, they didn't feel comfortable talking about God creating evil. God being within evil. God hiding within evil. They didn't feel comfortable about this. So they changed it to Oseh Shalom. He makes peace, wholeness. Boreh es hakol, and he creates the all. He creates the all. The Kabbalists explain that the all that's being referred to, this is a vessel of perception. This is a lens of perception. When one grows, expands their soul to the level of Tiferet Yisrael, to the level of equilibrium with all creation, gets a perspective where it can see divinity in all things, in all works, in all things, indiscriminately. That's called Tiferet Yisrael. The sages related, Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek olam haba. All of Yisrael have a place in the world to come. Shenemar, as the verse says, V'amech kulam sadikim yirshu aretz. Okay? Netzach Hador. This nation is all righteous, right? The mystics say, Kol Yisrael, all that achieve the level of seeing divinity in all things, called the space of Yisrael, Yesh lahem chelek olam haba. They have a portion in the world to come. Shenemar, as the verse says, V'amech kulam tzadikim. That the nation is all righteous. You cannot see the righteousness in all things. It's because you cannot see all the grace. And if you cannot see all the grace, then it's one of two things. Either the grace is not seasoned yet, hasn't blossomed yet. Every fruit has a different season, different fruits, different times when they come to fruition and they blossom. Some herd of trees that have fruits, it takes years till they have a fruit and blossom. And on the deeper level, that if you were in a space of Kol Yisrael, if you were in a space of Tiferet Yisrael, if you had the lens through which you can converge with all grace and all divinity and all things, then there is no wickedness. There is no evil. It doesn't matter if this individual seems wicked within this temporal perspective of time, but eventually, through the greater orchestration of time, everything comes around until it's realized into fruition. Call Yisrael. All are righteous. This is a very hard concept for people. And the reason why it's so hard for them is because they haven't realized, they haven't reconciled their own shadow. The shadow is a byproduct. If you have a sun, the sun's shining, something that's blocking the sun, that blocks the radiance of the sun, produces a shadow. If you have an egoic awareness that is critical of the light of grace, that's pervasive, then it casts a shadow. That the aspects within yourself that you struggle with, that you feel contending within yourself, are all the byproduct of your prosecution of grace, of your blocking the light of grace with full realization. Through your ego, through your unrelenting selfishness, assertiveness, of your inability to share divinity and love with all. As the aspirant reconciles these parts, irons out these wrinkles, then the light flows out without shadows. Without shadows. And if the light flows out without shadows, they hear no evil, they see no evil. They only see fulfilled grace, and grace that's not yet in season. And this is it. That's the awareness of Adam prior to eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, before he partook in the fractaling of time and getting lost in the fractaling of time. You know, God's name is a composite of Hayahovah V'yeh, is, was, and will be. And if you're stuck in the is, or you're stuck in the was, or you're stuck in the will be, and you're not in the totality, then you're going to have difficulty reconciling. And you're going to say, tree of life, I get. Tree of good and evil, not so interested in the evil. But if you're in the totality, there is no evil. It's virtual, the evil. It's only unrealized grace, or grace that has not manifested in this season because your soul is constricted and limited from the totality of time. Because if you're so extended through the totality of time, then you would realize this grace, because you would see it and you would envision. That's what the name, the Tetragrammaton, that's what it means. Where all things eventually are united, asserting sovereignty over all that has happened before. It was all retroactively calibrated for the greatest grace. That whatever force or whatever quote-unquote evil you think there is, realize the space in the future where you're united with it. Realize the space in the future where you're one. And if you realize this, then it will have no dominion over you. And this is how divinity plays hide and seek. There's some parts of divinity are hiding, and there are other parts of divinity that are seeking. And it's a game. And the game relates to how much will you care about divinity, about your beloved? Will you keep seeking? There's nothing worse than playing hide and seek and nobody cares to look for you. And many of the most despotic, wicked people that you think are in the world are people that nobody looked because they were hiding so well. Nobody saw the grace in their soul. And it's because they never saw the grace in their soul and the light of the eyes of another reflected in another's eyes and echoed in another's heart. They started to believe that there never was a grace in their soul. That it was never there. That it's all randomness. It's all me against the world and I gotta survive attitude. It's all a game of hide and seek. You find that some children can play hide and seek and they play when a child gets to a certain place, tags a certain place, then he yells, "Free me, free them all. Free me, free them all." This is the space of Tiferet Israel. This is the space that Bore Esakol, the vessel of all. You see the grace in all things, in all people, because you found the grace within all things, within of yourself. And you love unconditionally. And you share the divine love that flows through you unconditionally, without prejudice, without bias to one aspect of your creative expression more than another. And people like this, who express their love unconditionally, who express divine love through them unconditionally, they don't have trouble being with this person or with that person, or being around this one or this one reminds them of this. Because they are in love with all of creation, because all of it is divinity, which they love equivalently, the divine grace in all things. And this soul, this spiritual master, he's able to hit the base of Tiferet Israel, where V'yamech kulam tzadikim, all the nation is righteous. And it's just a matter within the fractaling of time. You're seeing fruits. Some fruits take a long time to grow and blossom. Some fruits come every season. Some are more common, some are more rare. But it's all grace. It's all grace. These people, the more they do so, when they're emancipated, their freedom, their sovereignty, their malchiyah is equivalent to more than 100 who are asleep. The light that flows through their heart and their soul is reflected in their eyes. The love that is shared and imparted through their heart has an emancipating quality to catalyze the awareness, to realize the grace that was always there for those who are lost in obscurity. These individuals hit the base and their heart rings out, "Free me, free them all." Because it's all grace. Each one's a child of divine. Don't have to learn from hide and seek always. There'll be a time when the game is over and everybody's exuberant snack time, celebration time. Everybody. No good guys, no bad guys. Just make sure that when you're playing, you look for divinity in all places, wherever it lies. It's horrible, someone to hide and nobody to see, and recognize divinity in every soul waiting to be discovered. And work on yourself, and get yourself in shape inside, lose your prejudice, to share love unconditionally, lose your lust to compare and your prejudice of worthiness and unworthiness. Vacate yourself from that premises to elevate yourself somewhere higher where all are infinite and worthy. When you get there, let your heart ring out as you share your love. Ignite the spark in the heart of others that are comatose to eternal considerations. Let it ring out, free me, free them all.